The American idea is in crisis. John Locke is quoted as saying in his famous work, The Second Treatise of Government, that in the beginning all the world was America. What John Locke meant by this rather startling and I think inspiring pronouncement was that the Americas, the New World, as opposed to the Old World Europe where there were civilizations that were erected, where almost everything had a dominion over it, the New World had these vast untamed wilds by which man could go in and claim his own land, claim his own property, and begin building his life on his own terms. In other words, it was an entirely different world that had boundless creative potential and also boundless ability for a new civilization to be built. And this single idea, this idea of being able to own your own property, this idea of being able to chase your own destiny, became the civilizational bedrock of America. And yet this single idea is under threat within the country it was founded upon more than it has been in a very, very long time. Now, the American idea, my friends, is not simply about freedom or choosing destiny on your own terms. Well, that's a big part of it. The American idea is about pursuing excellence in the face of the unknown and in the face of limitations. The American idea is about reckoning with the limits of limitations to understand the human condition. The American idea is about understanding the limits of the human condition within the context of political order and then setting up a just governance to ensure those limits are respected and our creative potentials are not snuffed out. And yet, as I mentioned, my friends, there is a crisis of the American idea. And the epitome of this crisis in recent times, I think, amongst many other issues that I will cover, is the case of Peanut the Squirrel, which has gone viral across the internet and has struck at the hearts of people across ideological lines and across party lines, and may very well be, in my opinion, the rallying issue that impacts the election and impacts Americans' attitude towards government more than any other issue in recent times. Normally in my videos I give an intro, but since this issue is so important and I think I need to go a little more in depth with this, I will not give an intro. Just know I'm Christian Watson and you are now watching Pensive Politics. Before I get to Peanut, we must understand why the American idea is generally in crisis. The American idea, the idea that, once again, that you pursue excellence on your own terms, has been snuffed out by an ulterior ideology that says excellence is conferred not by what you do, but by who you are, whether you are a certain race, a certain sexuality, or a certain gender. The American idea of being able to apply your creative potential to the world to pursue your own destiny has been hamstrung and shackled by an oppressive licensor system where you must go to authority not to protect you in your pursuit of your potential, but to give you permission to apply your potential to anything, whether it be having a lemonade stand, whether it be owning a wildlife animal like Peanut, or anything else. The American idea has been shackled and taken down by an abusive land regulation system where the government can come in and confiscate your property in the name of eminent domain in the justification that it will be used for public use. This is another thing that's hamstringing the American idea. The American idea is tyrannized by false political concepts like public ownership or public use or the common good that give leverage to governments to overextend their power and abuse the people. The American idea has been in crisis for a long time. And in defiance of this American idea, many states have laws that treat their citizens more like serfs than they do citizens endowed fully with rights, with reason, and with all of the privileges that come with having those moral qualities. This is the epitome of the story surrounding Peanut the Squirrel's demise. But sometimes hearing what I just said and hearing it in the way I just said it is not enough to motivate people. But seeing something that is so close to home, pet ownership, being taken down by the authorities on the basis of these tyrannical concepts, does hit people's hearts. And if we're going to actually preserve and defend the American idea, we must understand the ways in which it's being attacked. And we must also understand how this crisis is encapsulated in the example of Peanut the Squirrel. The American idea, my friends, is a very deep thing that motivates and guides many of our lives. And it guided the life of Mark Longo, who is the owner of Peanut the Squirrel, and also a raccoon as well, who was so inspired by Peanut the Squirrel, and so inspired by his love of animals, and so full of creative potential that he chose to create a wildlife rescue reserve in New York State. In retrospect, an absolutely terrible mistake, but a noble idea nonetheless, where he would help animals. But a single complaint from someone that had something against Mark Longo prompted the New York State officials to come in and confiscate Peanut and his raccoon and euthanize Peanut the Squirrel. This has caused a bevy of memes to be created on the internet. This has caused an outpouring of love and frustration. This has caused the person who reported the presence of Peanut and reported Mark Longo for having him, because apparently this person didn't like that there was a lot of wildlife animals, has caused them to get exposed on the internet as well. This has caused so many different things. It's caused an outpouring, even from people on the left like Marianne Williamson, who you wouldn't even expect to be, rallying in something like this. But it should cause all of us more than an outpouring, more than righteous indignation, all of which are, by the way, quite valid and quite necessary. It should cause all of us to reflect on this crisis of the American idea, the unknown frontier, where the gift of freedom was prioritized. And not just the gift of freedom, but also the gift, as I mentioned, of understanding the human condition, the best conditions in which to work. That frontier has been so shackled down and so weighed down by things that oppose it. And when it comes to the point where you can justify evil in the name of good, and this is accepted by people and even weaponize people against you, that is when not only is the American idea in crisis, but your very lives are also in danger and in crisis as well. Peanut the Squirrel's demise, my friends, is a result of the tyrannical concepts that I mentioned that govern American life. The entire idea, by the way, of owning a wild animal is the epitome of being an American. In fact, Mark Longo, Peanut's owner, is actually the quintessential American. Because to own a wild animal is reminiscent of a people like Lewis and Clark and others in the founding generation that tamed the wilds to build something great. To own a wild animal is a venture into the unknown. To own a wild animal is to test the limits of your humanity by endeavoring in taking care for something that is generally not cared for by human beings. It is one thing to own a cat or a dog that have been domesticated for decades upon decades. It is one thing to own a raccoon or a squirrel or even something much greater than that, an exotic animal, which are not cultivated, but are instead subject to the pure laws of nature, and then to bring that in harmony with your life. That is, my friends, an example of excellence. And then to use that to help other wild animals is not just an example of excellence, it's an example of the industriousness that founded this country. But the state of New York, operating on the premise of public good, operating on the premise of community assent, the idea that the community should tell you what to do and the community should direct your life. The state of New York decided that this fundamentally American act must be punished, that this fundamentally American act must be taken away. This fundamentally American act was dangerous. The stated reason for killing Peanut, according to the New York Wildlife Department, was that he should be tested for rabies. Because Peanut, when they confiscated him on the basis of the reports from the neighbors, bit one of the people that confiscated him, necessarily so he's a wild animal that's being threatened, they're going to bite, and that then apparently gives them justification to go ahead and kill him for endeavoring in a basic instinctual act of self-defense, and then justifying punishing that act of self-defense in the name of the public good. Benevolence is one of the most abused concepts in our modern day, my friends. Benevolence is one of those concepts that many of us resonate with. We all want to be good people. We all want to do the right thing. Many of us do, at least. If you have a conscience, you have a heart, and you have a proper wiring, you do. If you're a sociopath, maybe you don't. We all want to ensure that nothing bad is going to happen. And so what authorities do is they prey on that, and they abstract the idea of benevolence. And they apply it in such a broad way that it seems plausible to us because it still contains that germ of human desire to do the good thing. But when you dig deep into their idea of benevolence wielded by authority, you see that it actually justifies evil behavior in the name of the good. It is a specious skin suit, a specious justification for something that otherwise, under any other name, would be condemned and opposed by all decent people. Wildlife regulations, by the way, are a category that not only hurt Peanut, but actually hurt Americans. Because wildlife regulations essentially say your desire to tame the wild, which is quintessentially American, should be overridden by the government's desire to keep a certain kind of animal present in communities. Your desire to tame the wilds or to do something in that regard should be, again, limited by the government's ability to regulate public safety, because the argument is having exotic animals causes a safety issue. Even though Peanut didn't cause a safety issue, generally the argument will be it causes a safety issue. But being an American is fundamentally about doing things that are unsafe, that are bold, that can lead to a better future. Being an American is fundamentally about being daring, conquesting the unknown, conquesting the uncertain. But that is being snuffed out by the realm of comfortability erected by state and federal governments that tell you how to live. Many people will say that Peanut's demise is an example of government overreach. Well, I think it's much bigger than that. Peanut's demise is an example of a country that has lost touch with its soul. Peanut's demise is an example of a country that has lost touch of the proper limits of authority. Peanut's demise is an example of the country that has lost touch of the founding civilizational pillar of Americanism, which is not only private property ownership, but also the tenacity to go beyond what is expected. Peanut's demise is an example of a culture that is docile and has been lulled into complacency by reality TV shows, and lulled into complacency by corporate media, lulled into complacency by so many things that depress your ability to apply your excellence to certain issues. Peanut's demise is the accumulation of the crisis of the American idea. Peanut brought joy to the lives of many people, millions of people. The idea that you could have an animal like that living in harmony with human beings, that's one exceptional thing. But the other exceptional thing is how that animal managed to just bring sheer joy and sheer goodness to the world, managed to remind us about the better part of our nature. And yet, despite that entire phenomenon being positive, I think, for civil society in a world of negativity, Peanut didn't conform to the tyrannical ideas that guide our culture. And therefore, he had to be dispensed with, according to the mindsets of those authoritarians who did it. My friends, we have to rediscover the American idea. We have to save the American idea, because Peanut is simply one example of this large cultural and civilizational crisis that Americans have been facing for a very, very long time. And unfortunately, there are more serious instances that I've quoted, where the American idea being in crisis brings people into more peril that goes beyond just an animal being euthanized. There are more examples that don't get as much attention. There are more examples that don't get as much outrage on the internet. And those examples, being forced to ask permission to establish a lemonade stand, those examples, having your property seized for public use, those examples, not being able to build in a certain place or do a certain thing with your land because of the land regulations or wildlife regulations or whatever, or nature regulations or whatever, those examples are just as worse, if not even worse, than the demise of Peanut. And those examples, and beyond that, should also be a rallying call for all of us as patriots to stand up and say, this is enough. The American idea is virtuous, it is pure. It doesn't always work out neatly, because it's not a neat thing, it's really a messy thing. But it's a good thing. And we're going to stand on the basis of that good thing. And we're going to correct this crisis by asserting what should be how we do laws, what should be how we see certain things, and then bringing our political order to heal with those expectations. That is the only way, my friends, that the American idea will be revived. They won't be revived solely through politics. They will first be revived through an understanding another American enlightenment similar to the enlightenment that occurred in the 18th century, that brings us into fruition with the destiny of our country. And then the politics will change. But until that point, I think we should revise John Locke's quote, where he said in his day, in the beginning all the world of America was America. We would better be put saying, in the end, America looked like all of the countries that it sought to defy by its founding. I certainly wish and certainly hope that it is not going to be our result, but at this rate it will be. Rest in peace, Peanut, and may all of us fight for American civilization in order to prevent certain things like this from happening again. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can to keep this message out there. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remain more motivated, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.